Hello and welcome to Efficient Strategy Gaming. Today I have something special planned for you guys. We have a complete setup of the Battle of France in May 10th, 1940. I'm going to be playing as the Germans on Elite Iron Man mode with historical AI. So let's get into it. I want to show you how the divisions were divided up, how the order of battle went, and kind of what happened on this day. We just passed the anniversary of the Battle for France here a few days ago, so I thought this would be interesting to show you guys this piece of history. So I've set up the German army as it was on that date, and I just want to go over with you kind of the order of battle, as it were, for the Battle of France. So the German army was divided up into Army Group A, B, and C. Army Group A was the main thrust that would try to go over here to Calais. Army Group B would move through the Netherlands, and Army Group C was a holding force that would basically stay in front of the Maginot line here and just attack and make it look like maybe the main thrust was here in the Maginot. So Army Group A the commander was von Rundstedt, and von Rundstedt had von Klug, and the von Klug's army looked like this. I'm not using von Klug because Rommel was actually in this division of Army Group A, and he is actually a better commander. Von Klug starts off in Hearts of Iron 4 as a field marshal, so I thought Rommel would do a better job. Rommel was actually in command of one of these two panzer divisions right here, and he only commanded one division. He didn't command 12. Then you have List, who is lined up someplace right here in this region. So Rommel is actually in the lower half of Belgium right here, and he went through about right there. And List is mainly an infantry force, so he would follow the panzers. And then you have, it was not Model as the head of this army group, but he was the chief staff officer, and he's the only one available to me, so I made him the head of this army. And he just has infantry. And then literally von Weiss and Blaskowitz are back here, and they have reserve forces. So these were basically reserves that were to be doled out after the initial assault. The interesting part of Army Group A is the fact that von Kleist had his own army group, and his army group was in command of the panzers. So you have within this army group von Kleist, you have Guderian's group. Guderian was in charge of 4 divisions, including Gross Deutschland. So I've made a division template here for Gross Deutschland. It's going to be a mobile infantry with mechanized infantry. The mechanized infantry was only present in small numbers in some of these mobile infantry units. And so that's that. And then I'll show you the template that I'm using to mirror the German panzer divisions. And the Germans, it seems like, were big on anti-tank, and I actually copied a panzer division that Military History Visualized. That channel is a very good one if you want to look. I kind of copied the composition that they had, and I didn't do a very good job, but I did it as much as possible. So one of the panzer divisions had 93 Panzer 1s, 122 Panzer 2s, 26 Panzer 3s, and 56 Panzer 4s. So you could see that it was very heavy on the light tank side, but did incorporate medium tanks. So I'm kind of close in the ballpark range of these numbers. And a tank division would typically have about 48 anti-tank guns. And so I have 60 in this one, so the Germans were a little heavily weighted towards anti-tank, and a typical German division would have around 12 anti-air guns. So let me show you the template that I'm using for a typical German division. So you have anti-air right there. you have 24 anti-tank, and you have 20, let's see, 50 anti-air guns. So this is just going to, you know, like I said, be in the ballpark of what a division might be like at around this time. Under Army Group Kleist, there's also Reinhard was commanding 2 panzer divisions. Now, I could not find a general in Hearts available to Germany in Hearts of Iron 4, but there was a 3rd group under Kleist, and that was the Mechanized Infantry here, the Motorized Infantry rather. And I've got 3 of those divisions, and I just put them in Army Group Reinhardt there, because why not? I don't really have a commander, and I want this to go well, so I want these 3 divisions to basically have the bonuses that Reinhardt brings to the table here. Now let's move to Army Group B. Army Group B up here was commanded by Fedor von Bock, and Army Group B was not supposed to be too flashy. It only had, I believe, 2 panzer divisions and 1 cavalry division, and they were basically going to drive through the Netherlands here. And as you can see later, something kind of unexpected happened with Army Group B, but something actually quite fantastic. And then Army Group C was commanded by Ritter von Lieb, and as you can see here, there's 25 like infantry divisions. And this force right here was commanded by a German general that also was not available in Hearts of Iron 4. But I don't think that this piece of the line even attacked. I think this is the Rhine, if I'm not mistaken, and this piece of the German army didn't even attack till May 16th. So, but they did attack across the Maginot line right here. The Maginot line ends in Luxembourg right here. And let's go over shortly how the French in Belgium divisions were set up. So the Netherlands and the Belgium were just set up, and the Luxembourg forces were set up, as you see right here. This is pretty close. But there's something called the Phoney War. So basically, after Germany in October 1939 invaded Poland, France and England declared war against Germany, and the French forces got up to the Maginot Line and just halted right there. Well, what happened after that was, so you have from October 1939 to May 1940 was coined the Phoney War, because there was no fighting along this front. And as you can see, Germany took over Poland over here. Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg maintained neutrality. Therefore, the French and English troops were not allowed to move into Brussels or Luxembourg. And the plan was, there was some communication between the 2 countries, but the plan was to set up a secondary line right here across the Dial River. And I think the Dial River somehow goes here. This should be the Maas, and the Dial is somewhere around here, and it would be called the Dial Line, and it would mirror somewhat the Dial River, and then right here is the Gambelot Gap, and then you'd basically set up your forces through here, and this should be Sedan right there. So the plan was, as soon as the Germans invaded Belgium, the French and English forces would set up along the Dial Line right there. And then also the Netherlands forces could link up, and they could all consolidate their line, and it would be a lot. It would shore up their line to be a much less of a distance here, rather than having this kind of big bubble over here. The other thing that happened was the French started to extend the Maginot Line. So obviously they had October, November, December. They had about like 7 or 8 months to set up a fortified zone here along the French-Belgian border. So this does not mirror what happened in real life perfectly, and I actually spent a lot of time trying to think if I wanted just to declare war against Belgium, just so that the French would set up in here. But through my studying, I found out that they actually were set up along this line right here. As you can see, all the French forces are on the Alsace-Lorraine region, and Italy has even attacked down here. I don't think there was much fighting with the Italians, but I do think that there was a holding force down here that the Italians had. The Italians after the war would get a concession, kind of like right here, this concession of land, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. The last part of the whole battle plan that I'm trying to mimic here, you have Kesselring that I've made a field marshal, and you have Kurt Student, who was the actual commander of the paratroopers at this time. So the paratroopers forces were split up into two main forces. The one that landed here on Eben Emanuel, and it was kind of like that was a big fortress, and they landed, I believe, 85 men onto the fortress, and it took them a couple hours, but 85 men took over a fortress of 1,000 soldiers. So it was a big deal. They landed on top of the fortress with glider planes and used shaped charges to take out the guns so that the advancing German forces could overrun the fortress. That was only 85 paratroopers, though. And I'm going to use a whole airborne division because, as you can see, there's 14 divisions right here, and I can't attack the fortress kind of piecemeal. So to mirror this, I have a whole airborne division that's going to attack in that sector. The other airborne attack right here is to try to get this. I think there's an airbase right here in the Netherlands. If I'm not sure, if I'm wrong, I'll know. But basically, the other airborne divisions were led by Kurt Student, and they took several air bases in the Netherlands. As you can see, in real life, this Army Group B up here went through the Netherlands like a knife through butter, basically. So the plan was that the Netherlands forces could link up with the Belgians, but I don't even think that they had a chance to do that because Army Group B moved so quickly. And I think part of the reason why was because the Germans had air superiority, and they were able to land paratroopers there in the Netherlands and take those air bases. So we're going to start the playthrough here. The attack started actually around midnight. I've seen historical reports where there were kind of spies in Luxembourg that had cut the phone lines from the front to the main city in Luxembourg. They had also had a lot of small arms attacks with plainclothes German-speaking civilian-looking people along the fronts here, like infiltrators basically. And so that happened at midnight, but the main attack started at about 4 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and start here, and we're going to see what happens. And I'm going to kind of go through a timeline here, but the advance of the Germans, after studying this, to me was startling, to be honest with you, because by May 16th, they're at Sedan, and they have a bridgehead over the Maas River. So that's only 6 days, and you got to think, yes, the French and the British were set up on the dial line by then, but they are by no means well dug in. So that's why I kind of kept the Belgian. I didn't declare war against the Belgium, sorry, Brussels and the Belgium country yet, because of this fact that the French still need to move over there. Okay, so let's start it up here. We'll click everyone forward here. Since this part of the front did not attack, I'm going to hold them till May 16th. All the air divisions should be microed. And the fleet's going to stay in the Baltic. Let me show you what I did with the air real quick. So I found kind of how many airplanes were produced up until this point online, so I have a rough, give you a rough idea of how many airplanes should have been at the disposal of the Germans. And it was 2K fighters, around 1K heavy fighter, 1K tactical bombers. Those are the famous Ju-87s. Not too many strategic bombers, close air support. Oh, Ju-87, sorry, that was it. The tactical bombers, actually there were around 1,900 Ju-88s and around 1,100 Heinkel 111s available. I wasn't able to get up to those production numbers, and there were around 72 of these Dornier 18s, I believe. This is a Dornier 22. And each one of these transport planes, there was around 350 transport planes being used in this assault, but there's no way to really mirror that in Hoi 4, since, as you can see, each unit of transport planes, you don't really know how many there are, because there's multiple planes. So that's kind of, this was pretty hard to set up. And here's my production right here. So you have quite a few production lines, and I tried to get similar numbers of anti-air, and I tried to get similar numbers of artillery, but it's really hard to do. If you go under the research section here, you can see why. The Germans had, you know, Flak 88s by this time. They had like 1,000 of them, but I can't have one because, as you can see, I really can't research it till the early 1940s. So even if I tried right now, it would still be 516 days. Pact 40s, from what I could tell, were not used in this offensive. It was mainly Pact 36. The Pact 36s had to get close to penetrate the French armor. So they had a ton of them. There were like 50 Pact 36s in each division, each panzer division, but they really weren't effective in piercing the French tanks. It was the Flak 88s. Other things that I really couldn't simulate were the fact that I didn't get Panzer IVs in time to make enough of them in large quantities, and I couldn't get the Ju-88s. It says that by 1940, the Germans were able to produce 1,900 of these Ju-88s, and you can't really get that till around 1939. It was pretty hard to research. If I had gotten... I wish I had gotten Panzer IVs earlier, because if you go into this tab right here, you can see how many that I have in the field. So I've got 50 Panzer IVs total throughout the 9 panzer divisions that were involved in this attack. And it looked like each panzer division had around 50 Panzer IVs to start off. So that was pretty hard to recreate. Also, as you can see, I'm not using the Panzer Is. For some reason, Czechoslovakia has built a bunch of these LT-35s. So I've got 700 of those and 1,400 Panzer IIs. The panzer divisions would have had a lot more, like 100 Panzer Is in them. And some of these Czech tanks as well, but in smaller numbers, 50 or 60. All right, let's press start on this, and we'll see how we progress here. The main point is that we get this army group into Luxembourg as fast as we can. So we're going to declare war. I'm not going to call my allies in. In real life, it's really hard to find this, but I think war was declared at 4 a.m. on May 10th against Belgium right here. But I do not think a formal declaration of war was given to the Netherlands or Luxembourg. So maybe they didn't feel that it mattered to give the Belgian people like a heads up, since they knew the Belgium had a pretty organized defense already, but the defense in Luxembourg was going to be pretty light, and the Dutch defense was going to be pretty light as well. So I'm going to move the main panzer forces into Luxembourg, and the panzer forces get to Luxembourg on the first day. They get to the capital by noon. And as you can see, that was one whole day. We've capitulated Luxembourg, so that's pretty good. We need these forces to move forward. I'm going to take my reserve divisions here and just move them into Luxembourg. And this is how it was. The panzer divisions of Army Group Kleist were given a kind of freedom. They were told to basically drive forward as fast as they could. And as long as the infantry didn't catch up with them, they would be given command autonomy. So that's a very important thing to note. So they were very motivated, Guderian and Reinhardt, to stay ahead, to go as fast as they could. Okay, all those people are going to join in. So at this point, you would have had the French along the extended Maginot line move up to the Dial line and into Luxembourg to meet the Germans. And just like in Hearts of Iron 4, these green bars represent organization. They would have lost a lot of organization as they moved up. They would have not been entrenched either. So this is going to simulate it right here. These French forces are moving across. See what they allow us to do. The main bridge crossings were slated for Sedan, and you can see that there is a fortress there. So what was happening at this time was the Air Force was given a command to kind of spread out and attack all across the front. What luckily had happened was the commander at the time had just torn up the orders and said, "Oh, sorry, we received your orders too late," and they basically concentrated all their fire right here at Sedan. And so it was supposedly a site to be held, and there was this huge concentration as Guderian's troops were making bridgeheads, as Rommel's troops were making bridgeheads. There are various rivers as you go along here as well, but the main river was to get across the Maas. So let's see if we can do that. Okay, the Belgium and Netherlands forces are spreading out, so we're going to call this the Dial line. This part of the front right here is the Gamblo Gap, I believe, in between the Maas and the Dial. And that's where the English concentrated most of their armored forces. We need to make sure that these guys stay out of this fortress. So let's try to have a tank attack in that direction, and this tank needs to get into Sedan. Okay, they're almost there. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to have my reserves, von Weich, attack into Metz. Metz should be right there. This was a heavily bombarded piece of the Maginot. You got to hold these people here so they can't move. Supposedly the French counterattack was starting to be gathered here in Reims, but everything was moving so fast that the French were still relying on basically couriers that would deliver messages via pieces of paper, whereas the Germans had radios in their tanks. Just to give you kind of a overview of the different styles of communication. So here we are, day 2, and The French are still trying to move across the dial line here. And by day 2, they would have been somewhere there. The first forces would have been up there. Let's see if he can't move into there. Who are these guys? Okay, List. List needs to move kind of in through there. And Memel should be going straight through there. It was Rommel's job to, as these forces kind of fell back and coalesced on the dial line, it was Rommel's job to get into the Gamblo gap with his armor and put pressure on to keep them busy so that they would ignore this thrust to Calais. I hate this shuffling that's occurring. Okay, now there's a gap of time here where we can actually get across. These look like there may be colonial divisions. I'm not sure. Okay, we made it into Sedan, and it's May 16th. Note that by May 16th, Guderian has a bridgehead established. We're not across the Maas River yet. So we'll have those motorized forces be a holding force. Uh-oh. I am going to need Reinhardt to, like, head into Riem. Or head through there to Calais. So, as you can see, if the French had entrenched this area, even if they were to fall back here, most of the French forces were up here. If I'm taking this line, these entrenchments are useless now, because I can attack them from the side. So you can see, you know, the Germans weren't dumb. They knew that the French were massing here, and that this would kind of be the way to go if you wanted to pocket off a huge amount of French and English troops. Oh, another anecdote I forgot to tell you about is we're actually recreating the Manstein plan here. And Manstein, during this whole offensive, was over here in Poland. He had been sent away after Hitler had approved his plan because Manstein, it was kind of a revolutionary thing, was no longer politically a viable person. He was after the plan worked, of course, but politically, the German OKW did not want him around. Okay, these guys should be moving in here. And there's Großdeutschland, is that wolf head. So we're overwhelming them. We have air superiority. And I should actually start moving some of these guys up. We'll get some fighters, like, really close here. Get them up to France, and then we'll really move through them fast. How are we doing up here? Okay, so the Netherlands, it's May 16th. The Netherlands, by now, have capitulated. And this is pretty good. But this Army Group B up here would have already been to the coastline. That's how fast they moved. We're doing pretty good here with Army Group Kleist, but we should be across the Maas by now. This is a little troubling. As soon as I establish air superiority, though, we should go pretty quick. Who are these? Is this Rommel? Let's get him over here to the Gamblo Gap. And then he's just standing there. Okay. Not sure where Blaskowitz was at this point, but if they could attack into there and hold those French troops, that would be golden. May 16th, this part of the line needs to start attacking. They're right there. Generalists. Actually, the general here, I forget his name, was actually... It was theorized that he was assassinated by Hitler in late 1943 because he spoke against him. He died in a car accident, though, somewhere in Berlin. Probably going to see Hitler. That's the one thing that's not talked about a lot, is like all these assassinations that occurred throughout the campaign and stuff. It would be interesting to see more videos on that, because even the King of Bulgaria was actually assassinated by Hitler, which is, you know, pretty gruesome if you think about it. He flew to Berlin, met with Hitler, and then died several hours later. Okay, let's keep going here. Who's this? Kleist? List. Okay. List, I'm going to have you just drive to Calais. Okay, so we made it across the Maas. A little late, but basically on time. I'm going to have Großdeutschland kind of try to expand our area there. And then these two divisions need to go straight for this region. Whatever river here, this is where they got below the town of Calais. But they got there pretty quick. You saw an overrun up there. Is this Reinhardt? Did you drive into Calais? I don't see the British Expeditionary Force yet. Oh yeah. So Reinhardt's he just got it. We're free and clear. We blasted a big old hole there. They're still attacking there. They're still attacking through there. Okay. And he should be attacking to the Gamblo Gap right there. So this is a pretty decent recreation of what the battlefield would have looked like up to this point. And the Netherlands are folding in quite nicely. This was, the Maginot Line was holding up, and I have no idea what was happening down there. And we still have air superiority. If you've played Hearts of Iron 4 before, you know that as soon as I march into Paris, France will capitulate. Just want to make sure these guys are still going to the Gamblo Gap. This fell pretty early. This is where Eben Emmanuel was, and those paratroopers... Oh, I forgot to... No, I have air superiority in all regions. I don't know if they flew across yet or not. Let's see. Oh, it looks like we lost them. Or those guys got pocketed off. I forgot to show what happened over there. Let's see, we'll work on Align Romania, because that's going to happen. And if you guys want to see the focus tree build that I used, look down in the description box below. That's the other thing. You can get Blitzkrieg pretty late. By now they should have Armored Spearhead and Schwerpunkt. It's just hard to get that far down by 1940. Blitzkrieg really wasn't a thing up until this point. This kind of, after the war, was coined Blitzkrieg. Get them into Calais. I believe that Guderian's forces got over here to Calais, helped put pressure on Dunkirk, and there's the British Expeditionary Force coming up. This is only a mile across from here to here, so the British Expeditionary Force could actually cross in a day. It wasn't that big of a deal. This is not a great distance. So Guderian's forces should have gone to Calais, and then later on they were tasked with coming back down after Paris was defeated and pocketing off there. So it's May 22nd, 12 days, and we have the encirclement that historically happened. I want to give orders to Army Group B to move in and take out the rest of Belgium and the Netherlands. So let's see here. Is that von Bach? We'll give them field marshal orders. Everyone's aggressively stanced, per usual. See how many troops are in here. Question marks. But we pocketed these troops off. Let's get Rommel's forces going again. We'll have Reinhard kind of switch his stance over there. Who are these? We'll have them stop. It's kind of hard to see. Who is this? What army is this that's lined up over there? 9 divisions. Huh. Might be on Witzelbins. Let's make this a little quicker. All these guys need to move in. Close the pocket, and then we'll turn towards Paris. Perfect. So we have this encirclement. Okay, Belgium has capitulated. Let's get these guys involved. We'll have von Bock's forces line up over here as well. And von Rundstedt needs to be set up someplace around here. So we did do a big wheel and we pocketed off basically the Low Countries. And now we need to go and get into Paris and then pocket off Alsace-Lorraine. I'm going to increase the speed a little bit. Let's move some of these forces around. See if we can't get some panzers up. Oh wow, they're all the way over there. The one thing I discovered, if you want to copy this build, is the fact that it is very hard to get rubber. So you always need to kind of game plan that and build a lot of refineries. I'm building a lot of refineries here late because Germany had a huge air force. And the reason why I think it was is because it's easy to produce airplanes kind of out of the public eye in hangars and things like that. There's typically a huge perimeter around Air Force, you know, air bases and things. You can move planes at night so people can't see them. So they were trying to subvert the Treaty of Versailles, and it was easier to build planes than it was other types of equipment. And that's just one of my guesses. Okay, I think we need Memel. We need all these guys to just move into Paris. There it is. Fall of Paris. And then we'll have Guderian wheel around and try to take the rest of France. The Italians are still hung up over here. All right, and there you have it. Battle of France. So I was able to complete it by July 3rd, 1940. So it actually took a couple months, which I believe it did in real life. So pretty good recreation there, using as historical equipment as I possibly could, as Hearts of Iron 4 allows. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun looking up Panzer Division unit sizes and what type of air equipment and to build. And yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this. One thing to note is that Operation Weserubung happened in April. So the German invasion of Norway had already taken place. It was too complicated to do that at the same time as the Battle of France, though. But it would be cool to kind of do a recreation of Operation Weserubung. But for now, I'll just suffice it to say that this was a lot of fun. It took me a lot of time researching this, and it's really hard to talk and try to command all your troops here. So I hope you enjoyed this, guys. Please like and subscribe if you want more content, and I'll see you on the next one.